Hi folks, broadcast is going to start in about 15 minutes. So if you haven't done so already, I suggest you log on to Moodle, have a look through the equipment list, download all the necessary files and get them all open and ready. Okay, folks, it's 2 o'clock, so should we get started? Hopefully, the 13 people that I can see watching right now are part of the Year 3B animation class over at LCC, in which case you should have all the materials that you need prepped and open and downloaded and, you know, ready to go. If you are not one of those students and you just randomly happened upon this live stream, well, you know, feel free to sit back and enjoy, and sorry that you have absolutely no context of what we're about to talk about. I had checked this stream yesterday just to make sure that it was going to work okay from my hotel room, and I'm not sure. I think the lag is at about 30 seconds. It might go down to as low as 6 seconds, but I'm not entirely sure. The only way I can tell if there's lag or if there's problems is via the live chat function on YouTube. So if there are any problems, can you let me know on there, and I should be able to see it almost instantly, and I'll do my best to correct it. In fact, can someone just write something into the live chat now, just, you know, hello Dan or something like that, just so I can see, you know, roughly what the lag is or the latency is. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that, but I'm going to get started because otherwise there'd be some really weird, awkward silences. So yes, we're in Reinterpreted Compositions Workshop 2, and in this session we are going to build on some of the techniques that we looked at last time, but we're going to kind of ramp it up a little bit. So I'm hoping you've all got Photoshop. Okay, people asking questions already. Yes, the stream records itself, so it will be available on YouTube. Okay, normally it takes about 20 minutes for every 10 minutes that's streamed, but sometimes it's a little bit faster. I'm really lucky I'm in a hotel that's got really good Wi-Fi, so yeah, it'll be fine. Have no panic. In terms of questions, I've got the chat up right next to my computer screen so I can see stuff as it's appearing. So Adam's last 2 messages I can see already. If you've got any questions, don't feel like you have to wait until a certain point in the session. You can just type them in there, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go through. I'm hoping that you've all had a chance to look at some of the materials that I uploaded. I will still do the Moodle book, okay, with links to all of those artists. Don't worry, that's my plan this evening, is to sit and fill all that out. Okay, this is yeah, it's going to be a bit of a jump around this afternoon because I've got lots of different bits of software open that I'm going to jump back and forth from. I thought I'd open with a nice plain screen just because it was the quickest way to test the latency. But I am here. Hi, yep. So I do actually exist. It's not just a voice recorder, and I'm not out sort of, you know, having a laugh in Turin. I am doing this all live. Right. Anyway, should we get started? So first off, I provided you with a piece of script. Does anyone want to tell me in the live chat what is that script from? Has anyone read it? Did anyone get it straight away where that script was from? If so, I'd be really impressed because it's kind of an obscure piece of description, but it's one that we're going to kind of work with across this session, and it's going to form kind of the backbone of task 2 for this whole workshop. So we're going to dive into that in a second, so just bear with me. I'm just going to start shuffling my screen around a little bit, and you might see a couple of flashes and things like that. I can see, just checking now, that it looks like the latency is about 1 minute, so hopefully that will speed up. If not, there's nothing I can do about it, I'm afraid. It's not my Wi-Fi, so we'll just have to sort of make the best of it that we can. Okay, really good. People just Googled the answer. Thanks very much for that. Yes, the script is from 2001, A Space Odyssey. It's from the opening scene. Yes, so that's what we're going to work with today. I'm just going to bring up some of the stuff that we're working from. So you might see the screen's going to kind of jump around a little bit. So ignore that really trippy visual that you guys are about to spot in a moment. And then we're going to have a look at the Reinterpreted Compositions task number 2 sample script. So the script itself is kind of an interesting one, because though you are animators, and you think in terms of drawn material or modelled or sculpted material as opposed to live action. The reason that I chose a Stanley Kubrick script is because of the festival and talks and exhibition series that will be running after Christmas, all to do with his works. So I thought this was a great opportunity for the animation class to produce some material that could possibly be displayed as part of that process. So that's what this is about. It's about that using reinterpreted compositions as an opportunity to create some material specifically for that series of works. So right, let's jump into this. This piece of script is the last sequence of the first act of 2001: A Space Odyssey. So this is to do with the very primitive, partially, evolved man, and I'm hoping you've all seen the film. I'll be a little bit sad if you haven't seen the film, but it's all to do with social and technological evolution. This whole sequence is about the steps that we take to become more evolved. So I thought this would be a really good one because there's no dialogue in it. It's actually much closer to an animation script than it is to a live action script. So I'm not quite sure how much you folks have done in the past, but animation scripts generally have far more narrative description in them than live action scripts, simply because with a live action film you have actors, you have people who exist. They are physically present within the space, within the composition that you're shooting, whereas in an animation nothing exists. You have to create everything, which means it's common practice for animation scripts to be hugely more descriptive in movements of characters, compositions of shot, physicality of performance. All of these things happen quite with a greater sort of intensity, greater frequency than you would normally have. Now, within this script, I'm not going to read the whole thing because you can read, and you've got the file in front of you, and I'm hoping you took the time to read it yourselves. But there are 3 sections that I've highlighted for you. So the first section is the opening description from this sequence. So from their side of the stream, in never violated safety of their own territory, the others see Moonwatcher and 14 males of his tribe appear from behind a small hillock overlooking the stream, silhouetted against the dawn sky. So that's the first description from this sequence. The second one that I've highlighted is exactly halfway through this act, which is Moonwatcher, who had been partially concealed by 2 males who walked before him, thrusts his arm high into the air. In his hands he holds a stout tree branch. Mounted atop the branch is the bloody head of the lion, its mouth jammed open with a stick, displaying its frightful fangs. And the third section of the script is Moonwatcher surveys the scene. Now he is the master of the world and he is not sure what to do next, but he would think of something. Now the reason I've picked these 3 pieces from this script excerpt is because they're fairly evenly spaced apart, and they're a good way to understand how a script is broken up. Within single pages of script, I apologise if I'm repeating myself, if this is something you've already covered and you're already really familiar with this, but if you're not, it is common practice to break a single page of a script into what we call 8s. So it's roughly 8 sort of shots or eight movements or 8 sections that you should be able to break a single page of script into. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is kind of 9, 9.5, 10. It's slightly more. I think it's more because there's a little bit more action. So because there's more tension in this scene. You're going to cut from one shot to another a little bit faster, so that's probably why this, it's a little bit more broken up and it's not a clean 8. It's not, a hard rule. It's more a guideline, okay? But yeah, this script is quite nicely broken up. So each section is fairly evenly spaced apart. We have the introduction to the scene. We have sort of the turning point of the scene. Okay, so this is the point at which the story kind of changes from what had been happening before, and then we kind of have the outcome of the scene. So what happens next, and what's happened that makes us kind of prepare to go into the next part of the story. For those of you that have seen this film, which should be all of you, because this is a cinematic masterpiece. This very last piece, this Moonwatcher saying the scene. So this is like the lead primitive man, the leader of the pack, and his behaviour and what happens to him in this scene is kind of a pivotal reflection of what happens at the end of the film. So it's kind of almost, this scene is like a premonition. It alludes to the greater themes of the film. Now, what we're going to do, more precisely what you are going to do, is you are going to select just one of these 3 highlighted sections, just one. And for task 2, you are going to create 15 different versions or 15 different interpretations of the best possible shot for that section. Okay, so think of what we've been doing in the previous weeks in terms of, breaking up a shot, thinking about how we position the camera, thinking about where we place characters in a shot, all of that kind of stuff. This is your opportunity to kind of take that information and take that really experimental, playful approach to shot design that we looked at last week and really go to town with just one piece of this. So it's entirely up to you which piece you do. So Adam's just asked, should we look at a previous, should we look at the scene from the film, say if someone hadn't seen it? First off, Adam, if you haven't seen it, that's your job this evening, is to go and watch it. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, yeah, you should have just seen it. What I wouldn't recommend though is watching it now. Don't go and watch the opening scene. You can find it on YouTube very, very easily. It's not difficult to find at all, but I don't want you to watch it because it will give you ideas. And I genuinely believe, and this is not knocking Stanley Kubrick at all, because the guy's a legend, but I genuinely believe that by not watching it, you will probably think of better shots than what he used. Okay? Yeah, so just don't. Go on what you think is going to be a great shot. Don't assume that you have to use that, watch that first and then kind of look at it and go, oh, all right, okay, I'll just, I'll do what he did. Don't do that. Right, so those are the 3 sections. Now, I'm going to kind of tackle all 3 of these, but I'm not going to try and, do your work for you. I'm just going to give you a breakdown of how to carry out the task. So what I would like you to do is, move your Word document to one side. Open up the Photoshop document that I provided you with, because that's what we're going to be using to create our 15 interpretations. We're going to do it all in Photoshop. Okay. That's two people who haven't seen Space Odyssey. Okay. You should just go and watch it. You should just go downstairs to the Kubrick archive and ask if you can just sit and watch it, because I'm sure they've probably got about 60 or 70 different versions of it in different formats. Wow, I'm a little bit sad now. No, don't watch it. No, don't watch it before you do this task, but just watch it because you should have watched this, because it's important. Okay. You'll have to bear with me today. I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm making sort of odd noises, and you'll hear me drinking and stuff. And hopefully the latency isn't too bad. So let's jump to Photoshop. I'm not quite sure how how far we've gone in terms of latency. So I apologise if it's really lagged. Hopefully, what normally happens with streams is, though there's a little bit of lag on broadcast, it's normally lowered for the actual recorded footage. It ties itself back together a little bit better. It might not be perfect, but I'm hoping it will be okay. We shall see. So what I've done now is I've opened up the Photoshop file. Hopefully there's not too much, as I said, there's not too much latency between the audio and the video, and it should tie together relatively well. But we'll see. In the Photoshop document, there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about before we get too far into it, because the file that I've given you is one that I would like you to use to create your 15 versions. Someone's just asked, how finished do these compositions have to be? They're not paintings, okay? These are comp designs. They are not visual development paintings. These are not full color, all singing, all dancing pieces of artwork, okay? This is about designing a shot and designing the best way to visualize a piece of script. It's just a drawing. It's definitely not a painting. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, and you'll see as I start to work what I'm talking about. So first things first, I have set out my Photoshop the way I like to use it, which might sound a little bit odd, but I find that this is the most efficient layout for Photoshop. Now, I provided you with a set of brushes. I personally didn't provide them to you. I provided you a link to those brushes. Those are the Winter 2012 brushes. They're a really nice brush set. You don't have to use them. You can complete this task without using them, with relative ease. I just consider them to be one of the best free brush sets out there, and they've kind of got everything that you need to do really cool, like not just concept designs, but like proper paintings as well. There's some really nice, very simple brushes in there that can create some very strong outcomes. So what we are looking at here is my kind of preferred setup. Now I'm just going to walk you through some of the stuff that's on this. So first off, down on the right hand side where the layers are, I've locked off two of the layers. So the top layer is the frames, which I just make invisible and visible there. So keep that locked, because that's the two frames that we're going to use to draw in. And then the bottom layer is the canvas, which again, just keep it locked. It's got multiple layers in it, but we'll talk about those in a second. Somebody's just asked, teach us how you set your brush presets on the side too, please. Oh, do you mean that the words? Is that what you're talking about? How do you see the words? If that's what you're on about, you just go to this little menu up here. And you select large list, and that will display a little preview of the brush, but then the name of the brush. In terms of organizing the brush presets, you just kind of drag them where you want them. So normally, what do they look like? Normally they look like that, and then you open them and they kind of pop out this way. But if you click that little arrow at the top, it will open them out big. Which is a better way to do it. Okay, I'm hoping a lot of this stuff. Oh, I got rid of history. Sorry, I've just seen someone say they have history. Like I said, you can delete all of these just by clicking on the little menu. You can just close any tab you like, and Photoshop's really malleable. You can change anything you like. So yeah, you can do pretty much anything in terms of layout. I'm really worried that I'm just looking at the way comments are flowing through. I'm hoping that there's not too much lag. If there is, I might pause the stream for 20 minutes in a little while and then restart it again, but we'll see how we get on. Okay, so let's talk about what I've actually put in here. So first off, let's switch to the selection tool, because it's nice and easy to spot. These grey boxes here, they were just created using the shape tool, which is just down here. but they are kind of special. They are exactly 1920 by 1080. Okay, they are full HD in their aspect ratio. This canvas size is 5,000 by 5,000. That's quite a big physical space. Okay. The reason we do that is, you know, when you're creating any kind of artwork, you need space. You shouldn't be working in a pixelated environment. For general sketches, I would recommend, yeah, like this, 5,000 by 5,000 in terms of physical space. For anything smaller, just don't ever. Maybe 3,000 by 3,000 if you're just doing like stick figures or something. But yeah, 5,000 by 5,000 for standard drawing. If you're going to do a painting, like a visual development painting, I genuinely recommend that you work at sort of 8,000 by 8,000 to do a painting on. Okay, sorry, you're just going to see all my settings and stuff pop up in a second. I apologise. Yeah, I genuinely recommend that. Yeah, work 8,000 by 8,000, nice and big. So, yeah, nice big canvas. We've got, like I said, 1080 by 1440. No, sorry, not 1080, 1920 by 1080, so I've just confused myself there. These two boxes. Now, the reason I've done two in a space is because then we can kind of get plenty of information in there. Okay, I've just seen a question come up about, will Photoshop get laggy? No, it won't lag. Photoshop is a really friendly piece of kit, and it's been optimized about 8 or 9 times in a row now across release versions. So even on a moderate computer, it will run fairly well at that size. You know, as long as your computer's got half decent specs, it's running, I don't know, i5 processor, 8 gig of RAM. If you've got 8 gig, that's fantastic. Anything less than that, 4 gig will probably do it okay. You know, your graphics card doesn't need to be anything too impressive, like 2 gig graphics card is fine. My iMac at home's only got a 2 gig graphics card, and it runs 8,000 by 8,000 pixel, you know, canvas is absolutely fine. So yeah, don't worry about that. Photoshop's pretty good, especially as you're only working with still images. Now, if you 2 gigs, it will probably be okay. If you start animating in Photoshop at this size using the timeline functionality, yes, you're going to run into serious problems. But just for painting, you should be fine. Especially if you use stamp-based brushes. So these are brushes that, like these ones, that use a stamp to create the artwork. If you start using those simulated brushes with the weird tilty brushstroke preview window thing, yeah, then you're gonna start getting lag and stuff. Anyway, let's get to some important stuff. So we've got our canvas frames. The reason I've put 2 in one file is because sometimes it's nice to have a comparison. You know, you can think of, oh, I've done it this way, I've done the drawing this way, and then I've done a drawing that way, and I can compare the two to try and make sense of them. Okay, let's talk about this fella up here. What is this? First off, credit to the amazing David Briggs, who runs a site dedicated to Munsell's colour theories. So what we're looking at here is the Munsell value scale. It's a really, really useful tool for artists. Basically, the Munsell value scale breaks down the 10 stages of value in the clearest way possible. The 10th stage you can't actually see because it's pure light. So what we've got in front of us is 9 blocks. Now these 9 blocks run from almost a pure black. I wonder if I sample that. Yep. So if I've just done a little eyedropper here. Sampled this black, and you'll see it shows up as pure black, 100% on Photoshop. Through to the other end, which shows up as 0, so pure white, and then in the middle, which one's the middle one? 4. Oh, that one's slightly off, 62. So, and then a mid-grey. I wonder what my background grey is. It's 59, 57, 62. So you can see there's a slight variation in these greys here. But what the Munsell value scale basically does is it allows us to kind of see all of light from the darkest to the lightest values in simplified steps. The three lines that we can see here, so these three rows, all have exactly the same values in them. There's no difference between them at all. But what the Munsell value scale allows us to do is see how they look against one another. Okay, so you can see if I select this one here, this is 50%. You can see 50% up here in the color in the top right hand corner. If I select the same one here, you can see it's still 50%, and I'll select it here, still 50%, 35%, 35%, 35%. So there's no change in the scales that are going horizontally. But you can see they look different when you place them against different values. You can see how strong that white becomes when placed against black in comparison to how strong it is, so 0 against 11% black. So it's a really good way to work out the best application of value. I'm just going to get rid of the volume because that could have all gone disastrously wrong. So why do we use this? Well, basically because in this task you're going to use values to build color. We're gonna move away. Sorry, I've just seen a question come up from Suzanne. Does that mean that our future shots are going to be in black and white using those squares? Yes, but not in black and white. Black and white simplifies things. We're going to work in values. It's a very common technique for story artists and visual development artists when they're thumbnailing a scene. If you had a look at the links that I provided last week, you would have seen a lot of artists use this for thumbnailing. They'll work just in grayscale. And I'm going to show you why. That's what this class is about, actually, is helping you to understand why it's a good idea to work in those values as opposed to just working in pencil. Now, some of you last week, you were already working in values. You were finding different ways to use pencil to kind of get across depth in your shots. If you haven't uploaded your stuff to Moodle yet, you know, in the shared space, please do so. The ones I'd look at earlier were fantastic. Some really, really cool stuff in there. Sorry, just having a little sip of water. But yeah, you know, it's this is kind of like stepping it up again. Some of you are already doing it. Now we're going to kind of kick it into action. So let's talk about how we do this. I'm going to select the flat horizon brush. I'm hoping that everybody kind of knows how to do like basic kind of brush and pen controls and things in Photoshop. If you don't, you need to learn. You know, Photoshop is the go-to tool for kind of everything, so you should be able to navigate it with relative ease. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select a pure white. I'm going to make my brush kind of large. You know, if you right click, you can just adjust the brush further. I like to work with a really flat brush. I don't know why. Don't ask me why, because I'm not entirely sure. But I just like these lines. Okay, this feels right. It feels the way that it should. So I'm going to start here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start thinking about, first off, dividing up this environment. I need to kind of divide the space up, like we were talking about last week. In terms of like marking out where horizon lines are or where foreground objects are. I need to divide this up. But before I can do that, I need to actually have something to work from. This is the first mistake that a lot of artists make, is that they don't actually have material to work from. So I'm going to jump back to my Word document, and I'm going to have a quick look at the information on there and decide on one of the shots which shot to utilize. I'm actually going to go for the first one. From their side of the stream, in the never violated safety of their own territory, the other sea moon watcher and 14 males of his tribe appeared behind a small hillock overlooking the stream, silhouetted against the dawn sky. There is stuff in this that is, you know, Kubrick is talking to me. He is telling me in his script what he wants to create. Him and Arthur C. Clarke have decided what this visual's got to be, and we need to find the best way to interpret that. And there are clues all over this. Okay. here's the first one. Appear from behind. I'm going to highlight it green so it stands out. Appear from behind. That implies that there is going to be foreground, midground, and background material in this shot. And then this one again, silhouetted against the dawn sky. I'm going to highlight that as well because that's really important. Now what that tells me is that the background, so the far background, is a far higher value, so it's closer to white than the foreground. Now the reason I know this is because I know what a silhouette looks like. A silhouette is a dark shape. Yes, it is shadow. It is when light is projected from the back of a shot directly towards the audience, and anything that passes between the audience and the light source, we just get silhouette. Yeah, we just get that strong outline. So just in these two shots, these two phrases, these two statements, already I've got some really strong ideas of what I can potentially create. So let's go back to this. With that in mind, so we know that there's got to be a silhouette. So the first thing I'm going to do is just wipe this out. I might bring this down just a little bit, so I might not go for pure white. So I do notice I'm going outside the lines here. That's fine, don't worry, it's cool. But what I can do is I can play around with some of my brushes to just kind of get it working the way I want. So notice I'm working on that layer one, so I'm between the top and bottom frames here. That's really important. What I am going to do though is I'm going to grab my Eclipse, my blender brush. You guys don't have to do this. This is just the way I like to work, all right? It's totally fine not to do kind of what I'm doing. But what I'm basically doing is just creating a really gentle gradation from pure white to that grey. There we go. And then let's go back to that grey and just really push it back a little bit. Now, apologies if you can't see that super clearly, but what I've done here, let's actually do that correctly. Is I've created a really gentle gradient in this shot. So let's jump back to my selection tool just so you can see it nice and clearly. But the top of the shot, so the very, very top part of this composition has been coloured. I say coloured, but it's been drawn in with the second highest value. Okay, so it's at, let's just put that. So it's only at 18% black. Okay. So yeah, not 100%, not 0% black, just 18% black. So it's just off white. So that's the top of the shot. The bottom half, you can see I haven't gone all the way to the bottom, but just down the bottom here, I've done it differently. I've actually used the 0% white. So as we get lower down, you can see if I hold down the eyedropper key, which is the I key on Photoshop for those of you that sort of haven't used it before, as I kind of slide down like this, keep an eye on this number that's over here. Okay, so it starts 18, 17, 16, 8, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it gets to 0 about there. So it slowly gradiates towards a lighter value. Now the reason I've done that is because here it says that it is the dawn sky. It's the dawn sky. That implies that the sun is rising. So wherever my horizon line is going to be, I need to be absolutely sure that I'm getting that kind of light, you know, that light coming from below. So the light's down here and it's going to be darker up here, yeah, as the light rises up through the sky. Hopefully you're all following me so far. You don't have to mimic this, okay? This is just my way of working and this is me processing what the script is asking me to do, all right? I understand some of you might not have downloaded the brushes, blah, 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 but it's just an idea. It's just one possible way to do it. Let's go back to the brush tool. I'm going to select my flat horizon tool. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to play around with how I can sort of create a strong environment. So they're going to appear from behind a hill, and they need to be silhouetted against the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the sort of the next few colours down. I'm going to grab this colour, and I'm going to kind of just squiggle in a line kind of like that. Cool. And I'm going to colour that in as well. There's no exact science here. Like, this doesn't need to be perfect at all. I might make it a little bit bigger. Actually, just kind of cover ground a bit faster. Let's turn that off. Let's really get a bit more coverage. Now, if you want to get, if you want to cover something faster, one of the ways you can do it, yeah, is turn off that airbrush tool, sort of thing up here. Yeah, build up. You get rid of that. I'm just going to rotate my brush just so I can get some kind of vertical kind of jaggedness. I don't want it to feel. There we go. Just like that. So that's my first piece of the silhouette. So that's my midground. This is the hill that they're going to appear over. Are we limited to just the brush tool? Well, you don't have to be. I mean, I'm a firm believer that these tools are here to help us. I mean, there's a million other ways you can do it. As an alternative, for those of you that maybe are not aware of it, you can use the lasso tool. So if you want, I'll do the next shape in the lasso tool just so you can see the difference. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to draw in some kind of background objects. So that's 50%. Let's go up to 35%. So there might be some mountains or something in the distance, kind of up here, that I might want to feature. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a shape like that. There we go. Now what I've done there is I've used the lasso tool just to kind of draw in a really rough shape. There we go. And then I've filled it in with this fresh colour. Like so. And then I'm just going to kind of go over the top with this just to maintain its integrity a little bit. Okay. So yeah, there's lots of ways you can do it. You don't just have to freehand with the brush. You can kind of be a little bit more playful with other tools. I really like drawing with the lasso tool. I think you can create some really kind of nice cool effects with the lasso tool. But you have to kind of be respectful with it. I'm just using the lasso tool now just to kind of fill in the shape a little bit. That's it. It's like that. So this is my mid-ground space. This is the hill on which my characters are going to appear over, but now I need to build in the foreground. Now, it does kind of establish, we go back to the script, we know that this is kind of happening in quite a hilly, kind of mountainous area. Okay, so we know that there's this hilly environment here, and I think we need to be respectful of that. We need to kind of find a way to build that into the shot. So the best way to do it is to establish that there is solid foreground shapes. So I'm just reminding myself, what was I working with here? So that's at 50%. So let's go darker. We're not going super dark. I'm just going down to like maybe 84%. And I'm going to do this on a new layer. This is a deliberate decision on my part. It's very important. When you've got a solid, strong foreground object, it's sometimes a good idea to work on a separate layer, just to kind of help control it a little bit. So I'm going to kind of bring this just here. That's it. So what I'm doing here, just by cutting that corner off, I'm just firmly establishing that there is, you know, there are larger objects here. There's something else at work, and you can kind of get really clever with this, which I will in a second, but not yet. I'm going to show you how we can establish some kind of really firm sort of layouts within it. So what I've done there, so this dark foreground object that exists on its own layer. I'm going to jump back down to the original layer that I was drawing on, and on this layer I'm going to kind of start to kind of put in some of the other objects. So I need to establish some floor and stuff like that. So this was here. Let's go for the slightly darker 62. Now we don't have to worry too much about this at the moment. I'm just kind of keeping it quite kind of relaxed. Because what I can do in a second, I can go back over this with the other colour just to kind of clarify that line again. So that's fine. Let's go back to this one and just kind of clean up these edges a little bit. Go. That's a little bit better. So it just helps to kind of solidify shapes like that. Yeah, give it a second. I can see that there are some slight issues with lag. That'll be my Wi-Fi connection. Just be patient. I've stopped for the moment. Okay, so it will catch up as soon as it can. There we go. I can see it's back on already. So what I've created here is just some really kind of cool division lines, just to help this space make sense. Just to give it kind of a little bit more clarity. Yeah, it's going to do that. It's going to bounce around lag-wise. So once we've created this, there's one more thing I want to add, which is this pool of water. I think it's really important that we get this right, because water is pretty difficult to get it working the way it should. Now I'm going to do my water on a separate layer. So now I've added a layer. If this is my, I'm going to name them just as good practice. So if that's my background, this is my foreground, and this is my water. Again, just referring back to what it said. Okay, they're looking, overlooking a stream, so there is a flow of water through this space. Now for water, I'm going to choose a grey that is lighter than the 84, so lighter than this foreground that's here, but it needs to be darker than this area. So if I go back to my Munsell value scale, we've got 62, 74, 84. Well, it's got to be 74, hasn't it? And then here, I'm going to just kind of put in and I'm going to shrink this back a little bit just to get a feeling of distance. let's just round that off. Okay. That's not bad. So just trying to sort of find a way to spread out this water. I don't want it to have sharp edges, I want to keep it relatively smooth. I mean, this is just a sketch, but we still want it to kind of make sense. We don't want it to feel unnatural. Okay, so just like that. That'll do. That's kind of close enough. And then just to kind of control it a bit better, what I might do is just bring this a little bit more over the top, just here. And then I'll explain in a second a way that we can kind of make this even clearer. Okay, so we're trying to really firm up the idea that this is like a, you know, it's got like this mountainous area. In the background. Just going to take a moment just to kind of clean up some of this stuff. There we go. Not too bad at all. Okay, so that's kind of the basic layout of this shot, and it's kind of, at the moment, it actually feels very, very basic. But that's a good thing. Okay, because now I can start, by using Photoshop to build this, I can start to use little tricks and little techniques to create some really kind of cool effects and cool elements. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start trying to find a way to just add a little bit more definition to some of these spaces. So for example, I can use the magic wand tool just to select areas like this. And once selected, you can see I've just highlighted a single value, so you can select a value and just work within a value to just clean up or fill in any color. So if I just select that again, with this selected, I can go back to my brush tool, and now I can like fill in the space with a bit more definition without having to worry about, you know, anything outside of that space, if I want to. Yeah, that's one thing I can do. The other thing I can do is I can, let's just clean that up a little bit, there we go. The other thing I can do is I can use the lasso tool, so this one just here, and with the lasso tool I can create some slightly darker patches. So for example, I can go like this up here. So this is just what I'm doing here, is I'm just kind of breaking this up a little bit. So what I'm doing, just selecting an area like that, finding out what colour it is, so it's 50%, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lower that, but only a little, sorry, just increase the black, so I'm just going to take it to like 58%, and then colour it in. This is just going to add just a little bit more depth and definition. I'm going to do it here as well, but I'm going to do it the other way. So here, I am going to take this edge here. And this was also at 50%, but this time I'm going to decrease the black. So I'm going to take it down to like 43 and colour that in. And what that does, it's just creating sort of a little bit more definition on some of the rocks. It just helps to break the shot up a little bit. So you can just do it up here. You hold the Shift key and you can add more of these little lines. So I'm going to go like that, for example. I might take that bit away. Go, and maybe a little bit there as well. A little bit there. And again, just it down. So I'll take it to like, no, it's too much, maybe 40, maybe a flat 40 or 39. And again, just kind of paint over it. It just adds a little bit more kind of definition to the shot, just gives it a little teeny bit more purpose. Yeah, so just trying to make sense of it. I can also jump to this foreground one. So let's just go over here a little bit. This is where you can get really clever. So with this foreground one, I need to show that the light's hitting this rock. Yeah, that's just kind of just bouncing off it a little bit. But I don't want to lose the definition on the edge of the rock. So because it's on its own layer, if I go over to the Layers tab, what I can do, I've just seen someone saying that the lasso tool has changed the game. The lasso tool is amazing. One of the artists that I actually mentioned to you last week, Armand Serrano, he does whole paintings just with the lasso tool. I'll show you some of his paintings next week when I'm in the same country as you. So with the foreground tool, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to where the layers are on the right hand side, and I'm just going to go up to the lock section on layers, which is just here. And on the lock section, I'm just going to select this little mask tool. Now what that does is it means that I can draw on my file, on that layer, but I can't draw outside of it. So it locks down the entire layer, which is awesome. It means that I can draw away knowing that I won't ever step outside that layer. So what that means I can do now with that lock activated is if I go back to my lasso tool, I can grab pieces of this rock. Let's grab like that, and then up there, and then up that. And what that's done, I've lassoed it, and did you notice that I went quite quickly around that outside edge? The reason that I've done that is because what I can now do, so I'm just going to go back to my Munsell value, so that's 84. So we want to maybe step that up just one level to 74. There we go. Yeah, 74 is good. And you can see what it's done is it's just added that little bit of definition. Not a lot, just kind of enough, just to make it feel, you know, more interesting. You can see here if it's a little bit too much, if it's just, you know, if it's just lingering a little bit too long, that what we can do is just go along the edge and try again with an even lighter value. And that's because the pool behind is at 74 as well. So I don't want to be at 74 over the top of 74 because they would match, and that wouldn't make any sense at all. So where are we? 60. Yeah, so it's going to be 62. So we'll go to 62 and I'll just paint that in on 62. And you'll see that's just helps that rock kind of stand out a little bit. You can even be like super subtle about it, just with some patches. So for example, if I just, where have I got a bit that's like sticking out? So just kind of here. Like that. I'm just going to take this kind of section here, jump to 76, I'm going to go down just a little bit, so just like 68. Oh no, it's not going to work. The other way, that's why. There we go, that's better. So what I've done there is I've just added another little bit, and it just adds that little bit of definition. You can go the other way as well. So if I draw like some crevices in, like that, and then I'll draw like another one. Let's draw one there, and one kind of there as well. Maybe a little one there, a little kind of square one. So what I'm doing here, you'll see it when I draw it, it will make sense, I promise. But what I'm doing is I'm just putting in like little marks, quite randomized actually, not too much thought into them. And then what I'll do is I'll work out what that value is. So that's 84, and then I'll step it up one. So that's 84. So I'll take it to 91. The brush tool, just sort of colour those in. So they're just little markers that will add like a little bit more sort of definition to the rock. So that's what it looks like at the moment. Now let's just kind of pause for a moment on this, because we're going to draw some stuff on it just to help it make a little bit more sense. And kind of remind ourselves of what on earth we're supposed to be doing. This is about composition. It's about understanding placement of characters, understanding the best way to visualize a shot and to bring a shot to life. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, I haven't walked away, I'm still here, is I'm going to create a new layer. So create a new layer. I'm going to call this layer Notes. Yeah, I'm going to call it Notes. And on this Notes layer, I'm going to grab a fresh brush. So I'm going to grab the pencil brush. And then, as opposed to looking at grayscale, I'm going to pick a nice, strong colour, something nice and bold. Excellent. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I think it's really important to remind ourselves about some of the systems that we used last week. So let's have a look. Let's first off look at our horizontal lines. So on this side, there's one line just here, and if we follow that all the way down, it's here. And then vertical lines, well, we've got this kind of strong one here, but if you look at it in terms of perfect vertices, you know, it starts here and kind of ends here. And we've got another kind of pseudo vertical line here as well. So it starts here and it ends here. Now think about what we were talking about last week in terms of compositional structure and using guidelines to help like chop a shape up. Look what we've got. We've got a really cool mismatched design. Please don't do that, Desmond, or I will bar you. I've just seen that pop up. Okay. So yeah, that's just totally thrown me. Right, let's look at it though. I mean, we talked about this last week about dividing a shot up, and I think it's happening. Yeah, I think the shots are starting to make sense. We've got some really cool composition. Bear in mind, at this stage, all we have done is we have decided where to put the camera in the scene. Okay, we have not done anything to address what our actors are doing. And I think that's really important that we've made, this is our achievement so far, just in taking a physical, think of it as a live action film shoot, because that's where we are. We're not making an animation here really with 2001. This is about a live action film shoot. We've just taken a camera and we've placed it into an environment. And this is the outcome that we've got already, which is a really strong piece of composition, really strong piece of composition. So I think that's something that we can kind of take stock of and we can be really appreciative of. And we've got some nice dividing lines. Now we've also got, if we kind of connect these up, we can see that we've actually got some really nice segments as well. So I'm going to do a green for this. Sorry that I'm using sort of these really strong colours, but it's the best way to make stuff stand out. So we've got a really nice section just here in our composition, which is really cool. We've got another kind of triangle here. And we've got another one just there. Yeah, you guys see what's happening here? We did this completely organically. We didn't force this. Yeah, we didn't make, you know, we didn't make this happen. Yeah, we didn't say, I am going to fit, you know, 6 triangles or 5 triangles into this composition. It's actually just happened really organically in thinking about the shot. And just like I was encouraging some people to do next week, look at in terms of values. This is like scored out. Yeah, this is, you know, this is a darker patch, and this is a darker patch, and this is like a medium patch. So we just do little lines. So it's what's happening is we're starting from. I'm going to do this in a nice blue. We're moving from dark to light. That's a really cool compositional trick there. And it's very, very effective. So I know I'm just looking at the screen now and I can see that the lag is up to about 40 seconds almost. Now the time is 3 o'clock. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pause the stream just for sort of 5 minutes or so, okay, just so the latency starts to lower. So the stream is going to go offline for 5 minutes. And then when the stream comes back, hopefully the lag will have stopped, and then we can start talking about what we do next. So moving on to placing characters within a shot, thinking about, you know, what's the best way to visualize what's happening in that narrative. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of screenshot this, and I will put it up as the image for the stream. So bear with me 2 seconds. So yeah, I'll be back in 5 minutes or so.